You're a bitch.
First up is Sorority Row. Pretty simple slasher movie here. Group of sorority sisters who play a prank on one guy, which results in the death of one of their sorority sisters. They try to cover up the death after the prank goes wrong, and got a bit of a I know what you did last summer type of situation where, you know, someone's now stalking these sorority sisters, and we've got to figure out, is the killer somehow connected to that, or is it just something random? I don't know. Let's the movie's you know, it's pretty much your typical teen slasher, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I saw this one in theaters when it came out. It is, I believe it's a remake of The House on Sorority Row.
Yeah, it's from my understanding, it's based on the screenplay. There were some changes made, and
Yeah.
yeah, it feels a lot more like, you know, like you said, I Know What You Did Last Summer than The House on Sorority Row.
Yeah. I have seen The House on Sorority Row, but I believe there was a bit of a different plot in there, like someone drowned in a pool or something like that. And yeah. So this one, yeah, it's a bit different. It's okay. It's I think one of my main issues with this movie and a lot of kind of teen horrors as time goes by is that I don't know if you can consider these people teens, but because they're in college, so some of them may be in their early 20s, I don't know, but it's just, you know, it's full of Chads and Stacys, you know, the guys with the chiseled abs and the bitchy, skinny, wannabe model type girls, you know, they're just all bitchy and
they're proud of it too.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's no real people in the movie. Like, I don't know, they're just... Whoever directed this, I don't even recall, but it almost feels like they're making a movie based on how they think teens are, as opposed to how they really are, or young people, let's call it.
Well, I would say I did know some people in college that didn't seem too far off from some of these characters.
Yeah, I'm sure you can come across a couple, but in my experience, they're not. Pretty much a whole movie's full of them.
Yep.
And usually, in my experience, it's the other way around. But yeah, there's a couple of decent deaths in the movie. As a slasher movie, it's okay. I didn't have any major issues with the movie, but at the same time, I didn't love it either.
Yeah, so I hated the first 20 minutes of this. And it's just sort of like what you say, just, you know, bitchy sorority chicks, and they play this prank, and of course, oh my god, we have to like save ourselves. That's what she would want. I just hated all of these characters. Like even the quote unquote gold ones, like I think her name was Ali. Even she was like, oh, well, I have a scholarship. I can't give that up. I hated all of these characters. And then when the killing starts to get like a little engaging, but then for the last, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes, I went back to hating it, because it's as far as slashes go, it's fine, but it's just so generic, like, and it doesn't help that one of the main chicks, the really bitchy one, just like keeps making these. I don't know if they're necessarily meant to be jokes, if she just got shut up, but I mean, she's not taking the situation seriously whatsoever, and it just there's a few things in this movie that bug me, including the ending, which I'll touch on, I'll try to touch on without spoiling. But just overall, this movie just felt extraordinarily vapid, and I honestly don't see how this has above a 5 on IMDb, and I know it's just barely above a 5, but I didn't see it. I just don't see it.
Well, it sounds like you didn't enjoy it. Well, you disliked it more than I did, so.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely, it's not like it's the worst movie of 2009. It's just there's so many other slashers that came out like in the late 2000s that, if not necessarily amazing, they're decent, they're a little, you know, more original. But this one just, I mean, what does this have? What does this give us that any other slasher doesn't?
Mm. I mean, there's a couple things in the movie that I guess I could point out. Like, one thing that kind of bugged me, and maybe this is maybe you're too young for this to be something that popped in your head, but there's this one character who looks exactly like, or at least to me, looked exactly like the actress who plays Winnie Cooper in The Wonder Years. I had to look her up just to make sure it's not the same person. I didn't think it was, because the actress would have been quite older than she would have been in the mid-30s if it was her, so it didn't really seem to match up age-wise, but it looked exactly like her from my point of view. So I'm guessing you never saw The Wonder Years when you were younger.
I never have.
No.
I'm deeply apologetic.
Yeah. Aside from that, I mean, well, Carrie Fisher is in it. I'm sure Star Wars nerds would beat off over that, but
I don't think she really added that much to the movie, to be
no,
honest.
she's got like two scenes, and I mean, there's one scene where she obviously has a confrontation with the killer, but
Yeah, I think the main thing she was here just is just to be a red herring.
yeah, I mean, I personally couldn't give two shits about Star Wars, so I don't know how you feel about that series, but so her presence in the movie didn't really do anything for me either. But I think she was, more of a big name to put in the movie, and I don't know, just draw some attention to it.
Yeah, a big issue I had with this. So, without going into any spoilers, when we find out the identity of the individual behind the killings, it struck me as much like the rest of the movie, just very superficial. Like, I sort of liked why the individual was killing these people, but then instead of being somewhat like just a sympathetic, oh, I thought I had to do this, like this individual is like completely psychotic, like completely crazy, completely over the edge. And it just felt like he went from like 0 to 50 over the course of like 3 minutes. Like it didn't feel real to me. I was pretty unsatisfied with how they decided to conclude this, and it didn't help that much of the movie beforehand wasn't necessarily great to begin with, but the ending and then like the small scene at the end, like the 18 months later, like again, like utterly pointless. Like it just bothered me so much, and that scene when the survivors are walking out of the house and a hideous sound is playing, and they like slow motion walk out of the house with the fire behind. I just hated it so much. It felt so Hollywood. It felt so glossy, and it's just not what I want from a slasher movie.
My biggest problem was the chick that said, or she said, if you wanted to see perfect tits, you just had to ask or whatever, and there was nothing perfect about those tattoos.
Yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I wonder if Chucky's biggest problem is there wasn't enough nudity. They certainly could have opted a bit.
Yeah. Well, that is true, because pretty much all the girls in this movie, they're all really skinny, and I prefer more of a full-figured woman, curvy and stuff.
I'm
And
sorry, but those women can't be in sororities.
well, they can be in. They can. Yeah, they
They
can go to
can-
my college any day.
Speaking of which, that one guy, hey, just flash a bit and then I'll let you into the party. That guy wasn't a dig at all.
Yeah, it was kind of amusing, but at the same time, douchebag. I guess the only other thing that I'd mention is towards the end when we do find out who the killer is, or kind of just before we find out, there's a line in the movie where this one guy is saying something like, "Your boyfriend's not here to protect you," yada yada yada. I knew exactly what the response was going to be at that stage. I actually said the response before the guy said the response, and I mean, I last saw this movie like 10 years ago, so it's kind of amusing that I could just guess the dialogue.
Yeah, it's just because this movie's just sort of like cookie cutter by the numbers Hollywood. Like this. I feel like there's really not much surprising in this movie. Like if you're surprised, the most surprising thing to me is how, I don't know, awkward the whole. I mean, it felt awkward to me. The whole, one of the characters has like a son for a father, so like he's concerned about the image, of a sorority chick dating his son. It just the whole thing just sort of felt awkward to me, and it just the whole movie, it just no, it's just not my thing.
Mm.
I have to admit this. No, I went into this one, and I've only seen this one time. I watched it. I finished it about 40 minutes ago, and I really wasn't expecting much. I was, I tried to go in with an open mind, but once like the opening scene started and showing that like uber cool party, and I was done.
Mm.
Though I am happy that you enjoyed it more than I did.
Enjoy is a strong word, but yeah, I thought it was okay. Yeah, I remember when I first saw this in the theaters, and immediately, as soon as the opening credits started, they're having that party inside the sorority house. I remember my wife at the time was saying something like, oh, I don't remember her exact words, but she was basically saying, like, do people really have parties that, spectacular? It kind of seems like everything's just played up too much. Yeah, so, Sorority Row has... I think it's got some decent kills in the movie. I mean, certainly nothing all that memorable, but there's a few decent kills in it. The story is pretty generic. It's pretty typical of, a teen or young adult type college slasher movie. It didn't really do anything much for me story wise, and a lot of the characters you just don't really care for them just because they're all so bitchy, and yeah, they're all so unlikable in their own different ways, for the most part. Even, I mean, okay, maybe one or two of the girls you'd say were okay just because they didn't really do anything too bad, but there's no one really to root for all that much, in my opinion.
Well, the killer, but
yeah. Well, even once you find out who it is, you kind of think they're an idiot as well. Yeah. So yeah, 6 out of 10 for me. I think 6 out of 10's fair.
Yeah. So, like I said, this isn't the. It's not like this is the worst horror movie from 2009. I just found it generally unremarkable and definitely unmemorable. I thought there was like maybe one or two okay kills, but overall, if you were to watch like one of these types of revenge slasher movies, just stick with I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like that movie, that movie blows this out of the water. It's not even close. Like this has very little going for it, and like I said, I'm amazed that even though it has mediocre reception, it's still as high as a mediocre reception as it is. I'm giving this one. I'm just going to give this a 5 out of 10. There's not much going for this, and I just couldn't see myself watching this again willingly.
I guess, this is whether or not you want to attribute it to the end of slasher movies for the decade, but, we were getting remakes of, obviously, this and then Prom Night.
Oh, God. Some true classics.
Neither of them were all that good, so slasher movies kind of fell off the radar somewhere around this point.
The 3D My Bloody Valentine also came out. Very hard 2009.
Yeah, they're all like late 2000s slasher movies, and then the next decade was just all about supernatural ghosts and demons, that type of thing.
Which in a way makes sense, because if they're just going to focus on slasher movies but just focus on remakes, just why bother?
It's not even that the 2000s were, full of slashers. I mean, there were quite a lot of slashers, but it certainly wasn't like the dominant subgenre of horror of that decade, in my opinion, either. So, in fact, I can't even recall what the dominant subgenre was.
I think it's all over the place, to be honest. I don't know if there was past a certain point, there was zombies.
Yeah. Anyways, we can move on.